Welcome to a new episode with the Success Grid podcast with me, Hussein. I am very excited for this one. I have John Livesay here with me, aka the Pitch Whisperer, is a sales keynote speaker where he shows companies' sales teams how to turn mundane case studies into compelling case stories. He's also the host of the Successful Pitch podcast. John has been interviewed by the Larry King. So, John, are you ready to enter the grid?
Let's go.
Awesome, let's go. So I gave a little intro about you. Why don't you give us a little more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, you know how there's so many salespeople out there. Some of them are independent coaches or professional services, like lawyers, accountants, insurance salespeople, and they all are drowning in a sea of sameness. People just perceive them to all be the same.
Yeah.
And what I do as the pitch whisperer is oftentimes companies will bring me in to speak at their annual sales meetings. And I also work with people in a group setting who are entrepreneurs and need some help on telling a story.
Cool.
Because whoever tells the best story becomes memorable and magnetic. You're pulling people in as
Yeah.
opposed to pushing people out.
Yeah.
And so storytelling solves a lot of problems for people who really don't like selling and feel like it's pushy. Well,
Cool.
this makes you magnetic and pull people in.
Yeah. So this is what you talked about. This is what sales today, mostly. Because I
Yeah.
actually worked in what they call direct selling or something like that. Like you take the discount coupons and you go knocking on doors. You go to a whole neighborhood and go knocking. Do you like this? Do you want this? It's a discount. It's good for you. It's good for you. So it's
Yeah.
like pushy. It's you
It
don't know
is.
what the customer want. He's there at home, not expecting you. Yeah.
Right.
So this is the whole concept you are talking about here, right? It's not like
It
that.
is.
It shouldn't
And,
be
and,
like this anymore.
no. And sometimes when people reach out to people on LinkedIn, they jump the gun. They go, "Hi, this is who I am. Do you want to buy?" And there's a whole
Really?
process, yeah,
Okay.
of nobody asks people on a coffee date to marry them typically, and yet people are struggling. Maybe if they're as handsome as you are, they can get away with that. But for us mere
Thanks.
mortals,
You
we
are,
can't do that. There's it's a journey that you go on with people.
yeah, exactly. So the story is about not the person who's selling, it's about the someone is receiving the value.
Yes, great question. So, when you tell a story, you are not the hero of your story.
Yeah.
Your client that you've helped is the hero, and you're almost like Yoda in Star Wars or a Sherpa helping somebody climb a mountain.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is that when you're describing a story of someone you've helped, that the other person sees themselves in the story. Would you like an example?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I was working with a healthcare tech company, and I said, "What are you saying now to doctors to get them to buy your equipment?" And they're like, "Oh, it makes the surgeries go 30% faster. Do you want one?" Well, that's a very left brain analytical. There's no emotion, and people buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. So
Yeah.
then I asked them some questions. I'm like, "What does it even mean, 30% faster compared to what?" So we got some specifics, and now they tell this case story. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was 6 months ago using our equipment in Long Beach Memorial, and he could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room an hour earlier than expected. And if you've ever waited for someone you love to come out of surgery, you know every minute feels like an hour. And he put them out of their waiting misery and said, "Good news, the scope shows they don't have cancer, they're going to be fine." And then the doctor turns to the rep and says, "That's why I became a doctor, for moments like this." So now they tell that little story to another doctor at another hospital
Yeah.
who sees themselves in the story and says, "You know what? That's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too."
Yeah. Yeah.
And the client said, "Wow, that gives us goosebumps. Never occurred to us to make a patient's family a character in a story." So all of that, the doctor is clearly the hero in the story.
Yeah. Great connection between what the equipment might do for the patient and the patient is being part of the story. It's not about the equipment itself. It's about helping the people who need the equipment. This is the purpose
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So what type of stories should we tell? Like, is it about us? Like about the doctor? Is it about the patient? Is it about the hospital, for example?
Yes.
Whose story should we tell about?
Well, there's three kinds of times. You first you tell your own story
Yeah,
when you meet people. You have to tell why you're so passionate about something, your own story of origin, if you will.
yeah, cool.
And so depending on where you are in the whole sales process, if you're just meeting someone for the first time, you would say to a doctor, "This is my mom was a nurse. That's why I got into this business." Um, or I was a microbiologist. I just didn't want to spend my life behind a microscope. Whatever it is that gives them a little sense of who you are. And then
Mm,
you want to also tell the story of the company, even if it's just a one person company. The company has a story of origin. We're called this, our values are this, a little bit of the culture fit. And then when someone says, "Well, tell me about what you do or what you have or product you have," that's when you tell a case story.
mm.
And in this situation, you make the hero of the story whoever's the person that's going to buy your equipment in this case.
Yeah, cool. So we took that, like there's three types of stories: the story about the person, the story
Mm-hmm.
about the company, even it's a one-man show, and the story about the business itself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what makes a story a good one, and
Mm.
when to use the story? What's the time to use the story? Is it like in the beginning of the business, or
Yeah.
when exactly that should be going?
Well, you have two questions there. The first one is what makes a good story?
Yeah,
A good story has four elements.
cool.
The first one is exposition. You think of yourself like a journalist. The who, what, where, when. You notice in that case story of Olympus Medical, I described that it was a doctor who gave the doctor's name, the location, how long ago it was. So we have a sense of where we are now.
Yeah,
Then you describe a problem.
exactly.
And the problem needs to have some stakes that are fairly high
Yeah,
so people care. And you'll notice how I just pulled you into the story by saying if you've ever waited for someone you love to
yeah.
come out of surgery. So now
It's
people
tough.
are imagining
Yeah,
themselves in the
yeah.
story.
It's
But
very relatable.
yes, and when you tug at people's heartstrings, they open the purse strings.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the solution is he comes out and tells that the scope, results of the surgery. But and that's the third step, the solution. But the fourth step is the secret, the
But
resolution.
this is the most important thing. The final step is the resolution, not the solution.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so the resolution is the results
Yeah,
that
the
we get.
doctor saying that's why I became a doctor for moments like this.
Yeah, exactly. For
Otherwise, if you
these
just
special
told the
moments.
story and the patient was fine, it's not nearly as impactful.
Yeah,
Imagine if The Wizard of Oz ended when Dorothy got in the balloon to go back to Kansas.
yeah,
But no, there's a resolution in that movie where she says, "Oh my gosh, there's no place like home, and you were there, and I learned so much about what's important." That's the resolution why that movie story is such a classic. So
yeah,
that's the four keys of how you make sure your story has all those elements.
yeah.
Um, and
When to use them?
when to use them? Well, you need to start thinking of your brain as a playlist. You
Okay.
want to have multiple stories available. So depending on who you're talking to,
Okay.
you would pull out a different story, just like you would do a different song.
Yeah.
So you're like, "Oh, I've got a story about someone who's a lot like you, the similar age, similar situation, what have you." So you tell the story. Well, the sales process has rapport building, and
Yeah.
even an elevator pitch I've converted into an elevator story. So that's
Yeah.
the
Cool.
beginning of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
conversation when the whole goal is to get people intrigued enough to say, "Wow, tell me more."
Exactly. Because when they say they tell me more, they want to be involved. They want to be in
Yeah.
it.
And it's our job to intrigue them with something that makes them ask that question.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, like I watched the movie Bernie, about the Bernie that died.
Fake
So
guy, yeah.
yeah, so there is a scene. He's talking inside his mind between him and the client that wants to invest like billions of dollars. So he says the one who speaks first is going to lose.
Oh, yes, that's a very old myth about
Yeah,
selling.
yeah,
And so I have a new technique for people. Instead of it being a contest of who, after you ask someone, "Do you want to buy?"
yeah,
Um, the old way of doing it was just to wait and whoever spoke lost.
exactly. Yeah,
So now I tell people after you say to somebody, let's say you're trying to sell someone a home, and you've shown them around, and you say, does this seem like the kind of home you'd like? It's a closing question, right?
Mm.
Instead of just trying to bite your tongue and say, I'm not going to say anything, I give people a little affirmation, a mantra, if you will, to say this to themselves 3 times. I am patient and calm.
Mhm.
I've had real estate agents double their sales by using
Oh,
that
cool.
because the person feels that.
He's
If you're
welcome.
trying not to
Yeah.
speak, people can feel that tension. But if you're like, I'm patient and calm while you make your decision or
Yeah,
think of a question you might have.
exactly.
And so here's the secret. Confident people are comfortable with silence.
Cool. Confident people are comfortable with silence.
Yes. And it's because you're not attached to the outcome. If
Yeah.
this person says no, someone else will say
It's
yes.
fun, yes. It would be cool. I think the purpose of selling, whatever it is that anyone's selling, is to serve. The first thing is to serve and to give value to. Now the question, the answer is yes or no. As you said, maybe someone says no, someone else will say yes.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I read your PDF top storytelling sales secrets.
Yes.
So there was, like you mentioned, the movie 16 Blocks,
Mm.
and I loved it. The thing, I haven't watched the movie, so I don't know what exactly, but this is what happened. Cool. So I was reading. I wanted to, as I was reading, well, I do definitely want the old lady to take her to a hospital or something. But then when I went down, wow, that's cool. New concept, new perspective. Okay, my friend, I'll give him the car to go drive the old lady to save her life, and I will stay with the one who might
Yes.
be my soulmate.
Should we give the listeners a perception of what we're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that it's a dark and stormy night and
Yeah.
you're in a 2-seater car and you pull up and you see 3 people huddled under a bus stop.
Yeah.
Your soulmate, who if you don't take to the with you, you'll never meet again. The other is your best friend who saved your life last year, and there's an old lady dying. Who do you save? Is it the old lady? Is it your best friend who you sort of one, or is it your soulmate? So this is an exercise I have people do, and it's all about lateral thinking. And so people go into little breakout rooms or workshops and come back as a group who they're going to save. And then I say, one option is to get out of the car and give the keys to your best friend and let your best friend drive the old lady to the hospital. And you stand in the rain with your soulmate and say, aren't we going to have a wonderful story of how we met?
Cool.
And that
And it's training. It's kind of romantic.
yes. So, but it's the premise of we
Yeah.
get ourselves boxed into options.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
lateral thinking is a concept that allows you to think, what could we do that we're not currently doing? Is there another option that's not obvious?
Yeah. Exactly. We should be looking like meta, I think. Yeah.
Yes, and just looking for different ways to approach a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So the people who tell the best stories get the sale, right? This is what you think. This is what we are talking about here. Like
Yeah.
the old selling technique is done.
The old way of just pushing out information and hoping it sticks is done. Yes, people are
Mm.
much more sophisticated today.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you keep pushing out information. The part of that's based on the belief that people have to know, like, and trust you before they buy.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, oh well, you got to get to know me. Let me push out a bunch of information about me and my company and my product. You need probably one more piece of information that's going to make you say yes. Let me just keep pushing information out on you.
Yeah.
And you just have to realize it starts from the gut. It's a gut. We got to trust you first. And
Yeah.
then it's a
Exactly.
heart. We have to like you. And then it goes to the head. And here's the secret. The unspoken question everybody has when you're pitching anything is, will this work for me?
Yeah.
And if they can't see themselves in the story, they're not going to buy. They might trust and like you, but if they can't see whatever you're selling working for them, that's why the importance of storytelling
Yeah.
is it lets people see themselves in the story.
Yeah, they want to see themselves in the place of the person who's telling the story, or how the story ends, basically, in a good way. Yes, I am in.
Yeah, because if you just push out a bunch of facts about how a bunch of people have made all
Yeah,
this kind of money,
we learn.
that's good for them, but I don't think it would work for me. They're not going
Yeah,
to buy.
exactly. We learned a lot in university and college about numbers and how to when you want to sell that like we have the best product because it's cheaper. We have the best product because we have best customer service. These things now may be irrelevant that much because there might be a higher priced product people go for because the person who's there telling a story and giving more value to the people and want their benefit at the end of the road.
Yes. The other thing that a story does, besides making you memorable, because if you just push out facts, people forget half of it right after you stop,
Yeah,
is they can remember a story,
yeah,
and not only, but they can also share the story with other
yeah,
people
exactly.
that might be involved in the decision.
Yeah, exactly. So this is you can start a story with maybe starting with what if.
That's also a great way to paint a picture.
Yeah,
I've used it to handle an objection when I was calling on Speedo when I was selling ads for a fashion magazine. I said to them, "Oh, you're coming out with a line of sportswear. Would you consider advertising it with the fashion magazine I'm representing?" They said, "No, we're going to be in a fitness magazine." And then
okay,
I said, "What if
exactly.
we just treated your sportswear like it was high fashion? We could have a fashion show with models wearing it around a hotel swimming pool." And at the time, Michael Phelps was on their payroll for a spokesperson for the Olympics.
Wow, cool.
And I said, invite Michael Phelps.
Wow,
And we'll get all kinds of publicity. And so that's how I use the what if to get a no to a yes.
yeah. So what makes a good pitch? When someone wants to pitch, I saw the entrepreneur's elevator pitch. I see a half of the guys gets rejected by like half of the way up. So what
Yes.
makes a good pitch?
Well, there's three C's. The first one is you must be clear.
Yeah,
Don't use acronyms. If you confuse people, they say no. And they're not going to tell you they're confused. So clear is the first one. Concise. It's not a 10-minute invitation typically to talk and talk and talk.
yeah. It's
And
like
then you
60 seconds maybe.
Yeah. And then the third part is compelling. And that's where
Cool.
storytelling and emotions come in.
Exactly.
So a good pitch should be clear, concise, and compelling.
Awesome. Three C's.
Three C's. And you should have that written down.
Yeah.
And when you practice your pitch in front of people, you do that as a little checklist.
Awesome. That's an awesome three tips. So I heard you talk about something called the business friend zone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard that. What's that?
Right. Well, we all know what the friend zone is on dating.
Yeah.
Right? And we get stuck, and it's really hard to get out of the friend zone at dating. And like, I see you as a friend. It's never going to be anything more. So in the business situation, it happens all the time to salespeople, where they go, I'm interested. Send me some information,
Yeah.
and they get all excited. The salespeople, oh, I'm going to get a sale, and then
Yeah.
it's
Cool.
crickets, and then you hear nothing.
Uh,
So I say you're basically stuck at the friend zone at work. And that's where storytelling can really come in to help you get out of that. Because you could always then follow that up with a story that intrigues people to go, oh, maybe I should be, a little more than just interested. Interested doesn't get you to action. You want
yeah.
to get people to go from I'm interested to I'm in.
I am in. Definitely, that's the required thing from the salespeople to do to
Mm-hmm.
serve to get the yes for them. So this is how salespeople get the yes for the sale.
Telling better stories,
Yeah,
tugging at the heartstrings, getting
yeah,
people to see themselves in the story.
oh, cool. Yeah, exactly. So you are called the pitch whisperer. So
Mm-hmm.
the perfect pitch elevator. How to do this? We talked about this maybe, like, but is it always required to have this three C's?
Yes. Yeah,
There
your
is,
elevator pitch, elevator story, every story you tell should be clear, concise, and compelling.
no, but why are you called the pitch whisperer?
Oh, well, I was being interviewed by Inc. magazine, and I was telling a story of when Anthem Insurance was deciding whether to hire me or not to speak to their sales team.
Yeah.
And they said after the talk, we're going to have an improvisation session and
Yeah,
have
cool.
people from the audience shout out objections, and people are going to be up on stage role playing being the doctor and people being from Anthem Insurance. And I said, what if I
Yes.
stayed after my talk
Uh-huh.
and I would whisper in their ear if they got stuck? Because
Cool.
improvisation is all about yes and keeping things going.
Yeah.
And they said, oh my gosh, we would love that. And it turned out to be the reason I got selected as the speaker. And then people said, oh, can you be in my ear all the time when I have a question I don't know how to answer? And so I told that story to an Inc. magazine reporter, and they said, wow, you're the pitch whisperer. So
Cool.
that's how that came about.
Awesome. So there are 5 crucial ranks you call.
Yes. I
Oh,
talk about having a roadmap. In addition to
yeah.
becoming a great storyteller, um, there's a roadmap because the old way of doing it is to do projections. Oh, I've got this many people at 90% are going to buy this 50-50. You've got this many people and maybe another 50 or 100 people at 20%. Then you do all the numbers and you come up with a projection of the sales for the week and the month and the quarter. The problem is nobody thinks of themselves as a percentage.
Uh-huh. Mm.
So I tell people to put on your empathy hat and start seeing things through how a potential buyer sees you. Are you invisible? They've never heard of you? Um, or are you just insignificant, which is, I don't know what's worse. And then interesting, we talked about.
Yeah.
And then next up is intrigue them. What would it look like if we had Michael Phelps and a fashion show?
Yeah.
People said to me they were intrigued. And then finally at the very top is irresistible.
Yeah.
And these are the customers that love you. They give you referrals. But like any
Yeah.
relationship, we need to take care of those people and not take it for
Mm.
granted.
Yeah. So how do you know where we are on the ladder as a salespeople? Like you said, maybe the first one, these two steps are tough to be
Yeah.
in. But how do you know that we are now in the final final rug, fifth rug?
Well, I think it's usually fairly obvious if no one's heard of you or your product or your company, you know
Yeah.
you're invisible to them. And if someone says to you, "Oh, that's insignificant to me. I'm not interested in buying life insurance. I'm 20 years old," right? That's
Yeah.
insignificant. Yeah. Or someone says, "Oh, send me information. I'm interested." That's obvious where you are.
Yeah.
And then intrigued, people go, "Well, how would that work? Tell me more." And then, of course, irresistible is, "I'm in. This is fantastic."
Cool. So speaking of these 5, how can someone build a certain and specific category to distinguish their business from the other competition?
Again, it all comes back to storytelling.
Yeah.
When you have a story of what makes you different and why other people have chosen you versus your competition,
Yeah.
that's what people remember and can say, "Oh, that makes sense. I now that's my criteria."
Yeah, cool. So isn't invisible isn't that bad. We can consider it a first step to stepping up, right? No, no, you can say that, yeah, I'm at the bottom and I'm not gonna do this. It's gonna intrigue people to tell stories.
Hmm.
Yeah. How do you win spot speaking at big companies for improving their sales yourself?
How do I get selected as the speaker?
Yeah,
Well, oftentimes people will either hear me on a podcast
good,
or they will have watched my TEDx talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life,
awesome.
or they often search the internet for storytelling salespeople, that speakers. That's a big topic that people are seeking. Or I have a speaking agent that gets a lot of inquiries. And
Yeah.
typically, then it comes down to me on a phone call or a Zoom call with people. And there, it's usually between me and another speaker or maybe 2 other speakers. And again, I tell that story of what I did for Anthem Insurance,
Mm,
and I take them on the same rung. So by the time people are talking to me, they're at least interested to talk to me
yeah.
about being the
So
speaker. And,
there's more coming into it.
and then I need to get them to intriguing and have them picture something like me staying and being available for an improvisation session and what that would do.
Mm,
And then that makes me, you know, get to the place where they're like, well, this is just
cool.
irresistible. Yeah, we need to have somebody who's not just a speaker, but's going to do a little bit more.
More than that, yes. So, do you have a certain like an aha moment in your life that happened?
Yes. In 2008, I was laid off when the economy was bad from selling luxury advertising, and I had to reinvent myself and learn how to sell digital ads.
Okay.
And then I got rehired back by Condé Nast and ended up winning Salesperson of the Year.
Cool. Awesome.
And the big aha for me was I'm the same person, whether I'm being laid off or winning this award,
Yeah.
and that who we are is bigger than
That,
any one thing happening to us, and that we can get off the self-esteem roller coaster
yeah,
of only feeling good if things are going well and bad if they're not.
exactly. Jobs doesn't define anyone.
Correct. Our identity is bigger
Yeah.
than that.
Ranking
Hey,
doesn't define anyone. You define you.
exactly.
Exactly. So, if you like had to start all over again, if you had nothing right now, what would you do?
I would start a podcast.
Really?
It's been one of the best ways to create content, to
Cool.
get to know people who can help, and to learn from other guests.
Awesome. Awesome. Love having you here on the Success Great podcast. Awesome.
Thank you.
So, as entrepreneurs in general, we all have like some kind of fears. To be honest with me, I didn't want to be like on a video calls, but I started thinking, why not? What do I have to lose?
Exactly.
So what's holding entrepreneurs back from doing their thing?
Well, I think there's really three fears.
Yeah,
And I had them when I started my podcast. So
really.
uh,
Oh,
the first fear was the fear of rejection.
mhm.
If I invite some big famous person like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank to be on, and
Yeah,
you know,
I saw that. It's awesome. I listened to a little bit. I will continue listening to it later.
yeah, I just thought, he's probably going to say no if we don't have many episodes right away. But my key there is don't take rejection personally.
Yeah,
And then the second fear I had was the fear of failure. Well, what if I do it and nobody listens? And one of my guests said, failure is just feedback. Keep going until you get a zombie idea so great it won't die. And
exactly.
that goes back to your own fear of failure. It's like you don't have to be perfect. Just do it and it'll get better. And then
Yeah,
the final fear I had was the fear of the unknown. I don't know how to edit a podcast or promote it on YouTube. But the way to overcome that fear is don't go it alone.
yeah.
So I have a company now that does everything for me, and I just give them the interview, and I think that's So the fear of rejection, don't reject yourself. Fear of failure, it's just feedback. The fear of the unknown, don't go it alone.
Yeah, exactly. I actually related to these the three when I watched your TEDx talk
Hmm.
because I kind of had it, but I thought to myself, yeah, the only thing that you actually have to do is just start now, take action, take massive action.
Yeah,
And what happens happens, and eventually it will turn out to be good, and it did for me now. Speaking from this podcast, I didn't expect
nice.
that.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
glad you started. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So my final question is, what one takeaway should be taken from our episode here today, in your opinion?
I would say the big takeaway is that when you tug at people's heartstrings, they open the purse strings. And the best way to do that is to tell a story.
Awesome. Concise. Okay, awesome. Thank you, John, for being here with me today. Do you have any, can you tell us about your website if the people
Yeah,
want?
sure. If anyone's um, a coach or a professional services company, feeling like they're stuck in the sea of sameness and want to explore working with me, I have a private online course experience where they get to practice what they've learned in the course with me. They can just go to my website. It's called Revenue Rockstar Mastery. The sale is in the tail, TALE.
Yeah,
And if obviously someone's interested in having me speak to their team, they can also reach out to me through my website, johnlivesay.com. And if you can't remember any of that, just Google the Pitch Whisperer.
you will
My
find
content
awesome.
shows up.
Awesome, awesome. I will definitely have links everywhere as I can. Awesome. Thank you, John, for being here with me today on the grid.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Okay, thank you.